we have to create an environment that's safe enough for people to say, hey, I don't understand what's going on. Help me out. Get me ready. And then you'll be ready. Right. And I think that from a leadership standpoint, I think it's important for us to always be looking for opportunities to bring somebody with us that might not think they're ready yet.
You're listening to the Building Better Futures podcast, where innovation meets inspiration. In each episode, host Eric Hurani journeys alongside notable thought leaders who are shaping the future, cultivating exceptional work cultures, and nurturing the next generation of trailblazers. We aim to spark inspiration by engaging in dialogue with leaders from groundbreaking companies, innovative projects, and exceptional teams. Our goal is to empower individuals to positively impact those around them and leave a lasting legacy of positive change in our communities and society at large. Let's dive in together and explore what it takes to build better futures, one conversation at a time.
Today, I'm joined by a good friend and colleague, Jared Green, Principal and Vice President at Langan Engineering. Jared, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? We've been looking forward to this for a while, so I'm glad it's happening.
I got to tell you, man, you're one of those people in the industry, and I know this isn't just me saying this, that just energizes a room. So I'm so excited to do this, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm excited to hear more about your story. It's kind of the most interesting part about this is people I know, I learn more about, like things that because how often does something come up in a work setting even, right? Like it doesn't even have to be work context, but like if we're hanging out at Salvador, right? And plug for Salvador for sure. But
yeah,
it's like how much do we talk about, right?
Yeah. Hey, you're right.
This will be fun. Before we jump into the show, I always do a good news and gratitude section. So any professional, personal, good news, gratitude, maybe a shout out for a team member, something you want to share?
Yeah, good news, gratitude. Let's see. As a firm, we've had some really good wins as of late, and so that's something that I definitely want to shout out my team for making that possible. The reality is that, an economy like this, you never know where your next project's coming from. So, when you hear a client says that you're doing a good job, I want to give you more opportunities, that's always exciting. So that's definitely a good news and gratitude. I'm thankful for my family and that everybody's healthy. We had some folks who are a little sick a little while ago, but everybody's feeling great. So thankful for that, for sure. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, well, health being like one of the most important things, I'm glad to hear people are doing better and hopefully their ailments weren't too terrible, but that's good to hear. Definitely always for me, and you reminded me, but gratitude for the team is always a good one, right? I forget the exact quote, but one person can't do everything, but many people can do a lot, right? Kind of mentality, which is really cool. I always do a gratitude on show days as well, and my gratitude is typically to the guests. So thank you for making the time to do this. But for you in particular, I also have gratitude because, we like as Infinite as a growing company and inspired by the growth you shared with us about Langan, right? And I hope at some point we get to talk about that. Actually, it's really cool. But, Philadelphia is a market that we've done some work in and projects in. And, you taking the time out to just talk to us about that was thank you so much for doing that.
My pleasure.
All right, cool. Well, let's get to know you. Tell me about yourself, your background, like where'd you grow up? How did you get into engineering? What's the story?
Yeah, what's the story? What's the story? Morning glory, as my wife, as my mom used to say that. So I started out in Southwest Philly. So I was born in Philly, and we moved in, I guess you'd say, in my childhood, right? I was 9 years old. We moved to White Plains, New York. So quite a bit of a culture shock going from being in inner city to going to the suburbs just north of the Bronx. It was in Westchester, living with my grandparents. And I didn't know anything about engineering, but now that I'm an engineer and I go back and I look at my history, I was exposed to STEM learning, like science, technology, engineering, art, architecture, mathematics. I was exposed to it because I was doing programming with Logos on the Atari 2600. Now, some of your listeners probably never heard of an Atari, right? But I was doing that basic type of programming. I was playing with Legos. I was playing with Tinker Toys. So I was building things and trying to understand how things work. I had a lot of toys that I would really tear apart. To if something made a sound or it talked, I was like, well, how is that happening? Like, there's got to be something in there just doing that. How do I figure that out. Right. So that was a part of the way I grew up, but I didn't have the language to say I want to be an engineer when I grew up. So going through high school, I took a shop class, technical drawing by hand, of course. And I said, well, I think I want to be an architect. And so I applied to architecture schools and I got into some architecture schools, but I got a full ride to Syracuse to study civil engineering. And so I said, I don't know what a civil engineer is. There was like, it said, you did not get into school of architecture, but we think you'd be a better fit for civil engineering. It had like 3 lines on what civil engineering was. And I just saw financially, it was like, it covers everything. So let me go for a semester and then change over. And I just never changed over. When I saw what engineers do, I said, I absolutely love this. Like the fact that you use math and science to solve real world problems, that was very exciting to me, like very exciting to me. So when I was in college, I interned at a company. It was not a civil engineering opportunity. It was a mechanical engineering opportunity. I interned at Sikorsky Aircraft. And I saw how things go together at scale, and I saw how people solve problems at scale. There, I was in a department of reliability and maintainability. So they basically look at crash and burn data or failures and see how to reverse engineer to see how you make sure that doesn't happen in the future. So it was pretty cool, seeing what corporate America looks like, to see how people do calculations, but then sit in meetings and talk about those and make decisions based on what they find. So that was cool. And then as I got later into my studies, I ended up doing a study abroad when I was, no, actually, no, I fast forward too far. I interned there. And then when I got ready to graduate from Syracuse, I skipped where I went to school. I went to Syracuse for my undergrad, went to University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign for my master's. And when I was getting ready to do the capstone design, I had to choose like, what's my focus within civil? Because it's this umbrella, right? And I really like structural and I really like geotechnical, and you had to pick one, right? So I picked geotech. And at the time I was applying for full-time positions and I was applying for graduate opportunities, and I got an opportunity to go to University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, focused in on geotech. I went to school for 3 semesters. And there I was going to say that I was going to do an internship at Langan, but I ended up not doing an internship at Langan because I got an opportunity to go study abroad in South Korea that was between my second and my third semesters. I got to be there for eight weeks, and it was an amazing experience. And at that point, then I accepted a job to work full time at Langan. I've been here for close to 23 years next January. And absolutely love it. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that in some time. So short story, and then somewhere in there, I did an internship at PAP Architects. I think I was in 12th grade. I was in the architect's studio, seeing how they put together their drawings. I was learning a little bit of AutoCAD or getting exposed to it, and then helping them put together their physical library with the drawings on Mylar and things of that sort. But I had opportunities to kind of flirt with the industry while I was studying. And I absolutely love engineering. And again, I'm sure we'll talk about ways I've been able to give back to try to make sure that others don't find about engineering so late in their experience, right? I found out in my late teens, I could have known much earlier that people do this for a living,
For sure. And it's a lot of what we talk about on the show, right? It's like exposure to the industry. And, I was fortunate, obviously, my dad and my family. So I've had it from a young age, but a lot of people don't. And, what professions do you see on TV? You see doctors, you see attorneys, you see, cops, but like rarely do you see an architect. I can't even, I think a lot of people, when we talk about civil engineers, they think of, I guess, the father on the Brady Bunch, I guess, was an engineer, I think, or maybe an architect. I'm not even sure.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
I watched that show growing up for years, right?
I'm pretty sure one of the other guests mentioned that. The one that comes to mind for me are 2 famous ones. Well, for me, famous, but on How I Met Your Mother, Ted Mosby is an architect, and George Costanza is famously not an architect on
He's not an architect. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I honestly, I think it's an opportunity for us, and we've talked about that in some of the organizations I'm affiliated with. It's like there's got to be a way to kind of increase the awareness of what we're doing, because it's everywhere. You can ride over a bridge, you can go in a tunnel, you can land on an airport. You land in an airport, and you're not thinking about, well, who's the engineer that was responsible for this? Like, who is it, right? So
someone is, and I think I always go back to, like, even I don't want to call them simpler things, but because they're very complex. But like turn on the faucet and water comes out and clean water comes out. It's like, it's a privilege, and it's, and it's something we should all, like, gratitude to all of our maintenance workers out there and all the municipal engineers and all, everybody that plays a strong part in doing this. So I'm gonna do a quick aside on something you said, because we do a morning huddle for my direct reports. And today was just like, we talked about some fun stuff. And one of the things that came up was their love of Toy Story. And when you said you were growing up ripping apart ripping apart toys, all I could think of was like Sid in Toy Story. Like, but I know it was more surgical than that. So I'm
It
glad
was actually very controlled. I remember one in particular. I wanted to make a robot that could talk, and I had a pound puppy. This is a real 80s, 90s story here, right? I had a pound puppy that my grandmother gave me, and when you push the paw, it would repeat what you say. It's basically recording. So however old I was thinking there's got to be something in there. And so I actually asked my mom if we could ask grandma if it would be okay if I open it up. And I had a home economics class, so I knew how to sew back. I said, I'll sew it back after I take the thing out. And they were like, sure, no problem. My grandma was like, he wants to do what? Yeah, it's fine. It's his toy, right? And I was so proud. I took the thing out. I found out it was a little device. I found a little switch. I put that into a robot that I made, and it could repeat words. And then I sewed the paw up. The paw was a little injured. He's missing missing a foot, right? But I got the stuff out. And so in my mind, I'm like, this is cool. Like, everything works because somebody thought of how to intentionally make it work that way, right? So so I didn't rip it up, but it definitely looked different when I finished.
That is such an awesome story, man. And like, that's like a true engineer. Like, you really, you're doing what you were meant to do. That was awesome. What a great story.
Yeah, and again, it's after the fact. I'm looking backwards, because a lot of time, like, I think freshman year, I was with people that were entry, we're starting out in engineering, and people are talking about how they grew up, and I'm hearing people that, oh, my dad was an engineer, or my uncle was an engineer, my aunt, right? And it's like people had always been surrounded by it. And I'm listening to, like, the toys that they had and the experience. And I'm like, wait, it actually sounds like I was probably supposed to be doing what I'm doing. So it's good stuff. It's good stuff. I'm thankful I ended up where I did,
And then tell us, just because I think this is interesting and unique to your story, tell us about South Korea. Like,
Oh my
one,
goodness.
did you get to pick to go there? And then two, like, was it?
Yeah, so this was a program that was it was through the NSF, so National Science Foundation. They picked American researchers that wanted to get overseas experience, particularly in Asia. And there was a cultural component where your students went to Japan, China, and South Korea. And you just put your name, you apply. Like, I had to actually apply. And I didn't get to pick what country I was going to. And I didn't know much. That was my first time. It wasn't my first time on a plane, but it was my first time. Yeah, it was my first time being on a plane that long.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so
Well,
that
how
was
long's
new
that
to me.
flight? Like 18 hours,
It
16 hours?
was, I think we flew for like 13 hours to Japan, and then an hour to Korea or something like that. But
Wow,
it was a long flight. It was a long flight. I was going by myself as, a grad student. And I was at Sungyeonggwan Daekyo, and we were in the Suwon campus, and then I was in the Seoul campus. So I got exposure to South Korean culture, and then I got exposed to in the language and foods and that sort. And then I was dropped on the campus for 6 weeks. And a lot of so there were 17 people from the US picked for that program for South Korea. And most of them were doctors. Most of them were medical students. And I was one of the few engineers. I think there were like 2 mechanical engineers. I was only civil, and everybody else was studying to be a doctor. So it's cool. We spent time with them. Then we went to our university, and then we came back, and we spent like another week together, and like we shared our experiences. And it was fantastic. And I leaned into my connections from Syracuse and from Illinois. I met with several professors while I was there. I saw the research that they were doing. Didn't have time to produce a paper or anything like that, but it was a really good experience. And then, like, the added plus was it was during the time that the World Cup was being hosted by South Korea. So that was just, it was unreal. It's actually unreal. And to this day, I have a special love for South Korea. And I hope to one day be able to bring my family there. And another just wild thing, this is back when AOL Instant Messenger was a thing. I was getting homesick. So I was like, we're in another part of the world by myself. I was the only American on this whole campus, right? It was like a big culture shock, right? And I remember I was on Instant Messenger, and I saw she wasn't even my girlfriend at that time. She was one of my friends. She's not my wife now. but she was on instant messenger at the same time. And I was like, what are you up at this time? And she was doing her singing group. She went to Yale for undergrad. Her singing group was doing a tour of Asia at that time. And so we were in the same area, right? We're in the same time zone during that time. And that was always something we look back at our love story and how, our lives kind of coincided or adjacent. We always thought that was cool that we didn't plan that. And this wasn't the time where social media, know where people are at every time. It was just like, wow, this is somebody I know that's actually in Asia at the same time. We were sharing experiences. I think at that time she was in Malaysia, then Thailand, then Guangzhou. I mean, it was just really cool to have that kind of overlap. But yes, it was a great experience. And yeah, and then I came back, finished my third term or third semester at Illinois, and said, let's start working.
Well, now two things there. One is that's the universe telling you something. So very cool part of your story. And two, I now need to meet your wife, and I would love to hear her sing. I have no musical talent, so I'm always in awe of people that do. I'm like, if you can play a guitar or play the drums or sing, I'm just like, I'll sit there and listen for forever. I'm like, this is amazing that you can do that. That is so cool.
She's fantastic. She's fantastic.
Well, let's jump into, we were talking kind of about how you got exposed to engineering and kind of some of the like philanthropic work you do around that. You want to talk about that now and like
sure, yeah, let's do it.
Like maybe we could touch on also like young professionals, things they should be aware of coming into the industry, right? Because a lot of us do have preconceived notions about it, but it probably doesn't play out exactly how we think it's going to play out.
Yeah, I would say that the industry. When I say industry, I'm thinking of like architecture, engineering, construction.
Yep.
Those are the sandboxes you and I play in, right? And it's like the industry it can seem intimidating, it can seem scary, but folks are very welcoming. Honestly, when you think about design professionals, when you think about folks in the skilled trades, like we want to be able to share what we're doing with others. And if there's somebody that appreciates it, somebody's coming out of school or is looking for an internship or a co-op or an apprentice program, if you go on the route of the trades, people are looking for opportunities to pour into them, right? And so I think that that's something that people need to know. So when you're starting out, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to say you don't know something, but it's also a place where people are working hard. So, if you're trying to take the easy route, then this is probably not the place for you. But if you're willing to work hard and put time in, you can have a very rewarding experience. So for myself, there were a lot of times that when I think about my career, or actually my academic career, there were a lot of mentors that I had. There were a lot of people that I looked up to, whether they're upperclassmen or professors or TAs or just people in the industry that were willing to share an email address with me, right? There were people that I looked up to and I kind of stayed in contact with. And when I got to be like a sophomore and a junior, I was looking for younger folks that I could pour into because, it's like everybody needs someone, right? And you don't make it by yourself. You need people. You need to have people that you're working alongside, that you're kind of accountable to, and the people you're accountable for. And I think that notion of mentorship was told to me very early on, and I took it seriously. So even as I started as a professional, there were always people that I was, people, hey, I have questions. Can I ask you questions about how you're advancing your career? I take the time to take the call and talk to them or email or text or something like that. And because of that, I was always saying, well, there's got to be a way to make sure that people know about what it is that we're doing, right? So the Salvador Center, which you and I are now a part of, that's an organization that's been around since the early 70s. And, Mario Salvador, who the organization's named after, had this notion that, math and science needs to be presented in a way that's more practical. It's not that you're learning this because it's on the final exam. You're learning this because it's a part of the built environment. And so they have a curriculum that they use through pre-K all the way through 12th grade and focus primarily in New York City, the 5 boroughs, and then Eastern Pennsylvania. But they're looking for ways to get into the classroom and to give this relevant experience to young folks, right? And whether you're designing a skateboard park in your community or redesigning the lobby for your apartment building or designing a skyscraper, like they're learning how the principles of math and science are used in those relevant applications. And I was in the classroom this past week, and it's like, kids are, they're overjoyed, and you're like, wow, no phones are out, right? And they're all checked in, and they're all working collaboratively. And that's what it looks like for what you and I do for real structures, right? So the Salvadorian Center, I'm the chairman of the board there, or the chair of the board. And I'm glad to have folks like you on the board that are super dialed in and always willing to give back. And the reality is that, the students that we are pouring into now, you just never know. Like, we've seen several success stories of like people that are now, going to the career fairs, and they're hiring people now, right? So it's like it's meaningful. I was explaining to somebody the other day that, you walk down a corridor, and you're looking at a structure, and it's like, wow, people are working in that building, or people are going to school in that building, or people are worshiping in that building, or people are playing on that pier. And it's like it's powerful that people are using the spaces that we might have had a very small part and bring into fruition. Again, it starts out as somebody's idea, then it's on a plan, somebody's saying how much it's going to cost to do it, and then we're out there watching it get constructed, and then somebody's cutting a ribbon, and kids are running around on swings. It's fascinating, and it's very humbling, that we could be a part of something like this.
It definitely is. And I love the Salvadori program, and for a lot of the reasons you mentioned, because I think once the kids get that hands-on and collaborative experience, they're like, this is fun. And now I'm solving a real problem. Like, I forget, was it 2 or 3 years ago? The charrette was around like, it was around like, the sun, like, exposure on the building, and they had to craft, like, it's like, to me even, that was like, wow, that's such a cool, I was like, I thought about that afterwards, because I didn't attend the event, but when they told us about it afterwards, I was like, I would like to solve that problem. Like, that'd be cool. Like, I'd love to get a couple of us in a room and, like, get some construction paper out just for fun, right? Like, it's an exciting thing to do. So I think that's great. Well, okay, so we're transitioning, like, early career, how to get into the industry, right? That was a little bit of that conversation. Tell us about your journey at Langan. And I love the fact that you've kind of found a home someplace. Some of the newer fad is like, people jump around a lot more, which is also probably not bad, but I think you have a great story there, 23 years at Langan. So tell us about that. Tell us that journey.
Yeah, so I graduated in December, and then, I think it was 3 weeks afterwards I started at Langan, right? And I didn't know what I was getting myself into. It's like, when I look at the companies I applied to specialty foundation contractors, I applied to general contractors, CMs, I applied to consulting firms. And I didn't really know what a consultant is. I just know I was like, I need a job, right? I finished school, I'm going back to our grandparents' house. I know we have to pay rent. And it's like, I'm gonna need a job, right? I got this fancy master's degree from top university, right? So I said, well, let's see what happens, right? So I applied to a lot of places, got interviews. And when I was talking to the people at Langan, it was like, it's funny now because we had just really started that office. We had started that office, or restarted it after Trade Center came down, because we were at 90 West prior. And there were about 35 people in that office. And I interviewed with all the top folks who are now my colleagues and partners, really, really good equity owners, really good people. And I remember I was so intimidated, because I'm like, man, these guys, they have so much experience. And I'm just like this kid that just got a master's degree, right? And I said, well, if I got an offer from them, I probably would take it. It seems like this company has a lot of potential, right? It was like 350 people. The firm was like 30 years old, about 30 years old at that point. But it was a new office, a New York office, a new office. So I was there for 6 months, and then I had my first annual review, because the annual reviews are in the summertime. And yeah, it was tough. Like, there was a lot of things I was falling short on, and they were quick to tell me all those things I need to be doing better. And I remember going to my aunt and uncle's house that night, and I said, yeah, I'm gonna have to quit. There's no way I'm gonna survive there. And they were like, they were talking about, my family and some of my mentors was like, well, do you like what you're doing? Do you like the people that you're around? Do you like the type of work that you're doing? Like, do you like what you're a part of? And I was like, yes. And they were like, well, what do you have to do? Did the feedback make sense? I was like, yes. It was like, can you make those adjustments? I was like, yes. And it's like, so you probably know the answer. You should make the adjustments and stick out. And I did. And, a year from there, our next annual review, I turned around a lot of things that I had to turn around. And a lot of it was just not understanding what it means to be a consultant. A client doesn't pay you to spend forever to figure something out. It's like, you got to figure it out. You got to get moving, right? And if something takes longer, you have to figure out a way to consolidate that time and get to the right answer, right? And as I started to understand more of the bigger picture of what we're doing as consultants and as design consultants, I really started to lean into the field work. So I was in the field for I mean on off probably about 5 or 6 years. So it's the early part of my career, and I was living in White Plains, like I said, and we didn't have a White Plains office, but we had pretty substantial projects in Westchester, and I was in the field seeing those projects happen. And it was interesting because I think it was probably about 4 years. I did yeah, I was on an earthwork project at from I don't know if I'm supposed to say companies or anything like that, but I did try to think of what I was doing and who I was doing it for. So I worked on two pretty large projects in Westchester, and one was a 7 acre or 6.5 acre parking garage. So I was out there when there was nothing there, all the way through the supportive excavation going in, excavation happening, and concrete beam. So I saw the whole thing, right? And then when that project was finishing, then I ended up going to another project that was literally around the corner from there. Similar type of experience, but it was a building that had to be partially underpinned. And then we were going to do new foundations. And then while that was happening, there was an air traffic control tower for an airport in kind of like Orange County. So I ended up that I was spending years in the field, not really in New York City. And then when I started to come back into Manhattan in the office, I remember people were introducing themselves. I said, "Welcome to Langan." I said, "I've been here 4 years. I haven't been coming to the office, right?" And then I got to really start working on some projects in New York City, which was great. I'm proud to say I've worked on, a substantial development in each of the five boroughs, and it was fantastic. So a lot of time in the field, and real talk, I did not take my EIT when I should have. I should have taken that exam when I was in college, but I was doing all kinds of other things. Didn't have time to study for it or take it, and it took me a while. So I had to take it 3 times before I passed. I had to take it 3 times before I passed, but I passed the PE on the first time, which is a good thing. I still think the EIT is a harder test, and I always tell people, if they say, "What's advice?" Take the test when you're in college, when you're closer to the classes, right? Because when you're in the field and you're trying to study, it gets difficult, right? But so after I passed the EIT, then I'm like, well, what's the next thing? And I said, I really want to transition into the office. So I was asking to get more office experience, but I was still in the field. So, I was getting paid for overtime, and I was doing overtime. So I was getting a lot of time seeing the field and then seeing the office. And then, fortunately, I got to the point where, I was always talking to people. When I was in the field, it's like, I think it's a very human thing to do. Like if I see somebody in the morning, I should say hello to them. I think it's the southern, being raised by Southern grandparents, right? It's like you see somebody in the morning, you say hello, you please and thank you, that kind of stuff. And I got to know people in the field. So it wasn't like the consultant versus the contractor. It's like, no, we're working on this together, right? So I think that was good, because as I advanced in my career, folks advanced in their careers, and we knew each other. So I didn't know I was networking, but I was networking. I didn't know that I was making a name for myself, but I was making a name for myself. I did know I was representing Langan because I had the Langan hard hat, and I knew that I wanted to do the best job that I could, because me doing a good job or a bad job impacts everybody else that has that Langan hard hat on, right? And some of the proudest moments were when, folks and, my supervisors, right? And when they were like, well, we need to move you from this site to another site. And they get a call from the client. They say, no, Jared has to stay on this site. It's like, I don't feel good unless Jared's on the site. And so having that kind of notoriety, it's like, it was a good thing. I didn't know, right? It was a good thing. But no, I was always trying to understand, like I said, how things work. And I was making connections. And as I was making connections, it ended up that instead of, my supervisors getting a call for the next opportunity or take a look at this site, I was getting those calls. And when that happens, that means you need to hire staff, because you can't do it all by yourself. And so, as the office continued to grow, I started to become, I started to slowly, have more responsibility, and ultimately responsibility for more people. And you get to this point in your career where you're no longer thinking about it as, oh, I want a better title, or oh, I want to have a bigger bonus, or oh, I want more salary. Like, those things are important, but it's not the most important. It's like, well, I want to make this opportunity for my team member. I want to make this opportunity for this person I'm getting ready to hire, that's going to decide not to go to their parents' house, but they're going to move to this other part of the world in some cases, right? Or other part of the states, to then work for me. So I have to have projects ready for them. I have to have opportunities ready for them. I have to have a career path ready for them should they want to take it. So I started to kind of see those things as I got further into my career. And then I got the opportunity to, so I was in New York, and it was probably about 225, 230 people in that office when I was asked to, or given the opportunity to come to Philadelphia and become one of the leaders of this office. The person that was running the geotechnical practice was getting ready to retire. And they said it would be a nice transition plan to have, 2 or 3 years of overlap with you and this individual. And I was like, I don't know if I can run a group. And it's like, well, I've led groups before, but like, it's like, I don't have the supporting cast that I had in New York. I was like, how's this going to work? And I also didn't want to 20 years from now, 30 years from now, say, man, I wonder what could have happened if I did. Right. So I said, yes, I'll do it. And it has been fantastic. And the beautiful thing is that I still have opportunities to work in New York City. I still, I'm probably on the phone with people from my New York office all the time, because we're still doing work together. And, as when I stopped, I don't want to say stopped, as I transitioned to the Philadelphia office, it ended up that, we don't just cover just Eastern Pennsylvania, we cover the Mid-Atlantic region. So like, I mean, I'm responsible for, the last time I saw, I think I'm responsible for projects in 8 different Langan offices now, if I remember correctly. And then I'm licensed in 22 states. So I'm doing things in a lot of places. But again, that requires me to interact with, and gives me the opportunity to interact with people from a lot of offices. And it's been fantastic. So that's my long-winded way of saying, yeah, I've stayed here because I've continued to be challenged. I've continued to have opportunities to be entrepreneurial. I've continued to, I've had opportunities to pour into people, and people pour into me. And to be a leader at a company like this that's so well respected is an honor. And I think it's one that I worked hard for, and my teams have worked hard for, and I know that I represent them, and I want to represent them well. So I'm still here, and I absolutely love it. And I'm a big advocate. I wave the Langan flag proudly, and I make sure that if I'm in a room and I have opportunity to talk about the firm, I do, because I love what we're doing. I love what we're doing. And yeah, I'm not going to knock people that go somewhere and leave every 18 months, because I see those resumes, right? But it hasn't been my story. It hasn't been my story. I've been fortunate, I've been blessed. And I've had people that, I've had mentors that really, I still lean on them now to hold me accountable, to do more, and to continue to be smart and solve problems. Right. I think that's what it comes down to.
I think it's great. And I'm gonna, I always like, the reason I love to hear a person's story is because I think it's always unique, but there are normally themes that come across that like could be applied to really anyone, right? And so a couple of themes you mentioned I think are really important to bring out. Find a mentor, right? Like, and be a mentor if you can, right? I think there's 2 sides of that. Like, and being a mentor does not mean you need to have a lot of experience, like you could be a mentor for someone the same age as you, same career as you, but maybe you just experienced something differently than they did, and so you have insights into that. So like be a mentor. I think what you said about like the collaboration, right? When we're on a job site, we all have one goal. It's to build the project, right? We all have that shared goal. Now, yes, we have to protect ourselves and we have to do the thing, contractual responsibilities, and there's roles and responsibilities. But like, I love what you said, like in the morning, say hello and say good morning to people. Like I was kind of raised that way too. And you said, please and thank you. Like, I have a young daughter at home. Like she says, please and thank you for everything. Like, I don't know. There's just like, it's the only way I'd want to be, And so I thought that was like just being polite and kind and willing to like engage with, hey, we're here for a mutual goal. Let's do this together, I think is a really good thing. Create a name for yourself, right? It sounds like you were able to do that. And, like not that it makes you, like, it's not about being indispensable, but it elevates the value that your colleagues or peers can even like understand that you have. It's hard sometimes. When a client says it, people take notice. I guess that's the way to put it. Make a name for yourself. And, and then we started talking about leadership, and I want to get to that here. So like hearing your story and hearing some not, I don't want to call them challenges, but like great parts of it, right? Like you got feedback and you acted on it. I think that's amazing, right? You got some feedback that was, hey, you're not keeping up here. I think that's a problem, it actually reminds me of a story I have, like, and you know, I don't know, but for me, like, I generally did well in school, right? And I went to Columbia for college, and I took a university writing class. It was mandatory. And I got, like, my first writing assignment at Columbia, I got a C. And I remember I called up, like, one of my really good friends at the time, and I was like, her name was Jen. I was like, Jen, I'm not gonna make it here. Like, these kids are actually smart. Like, I've been faking it till now. Like, and she gave me similar advice to what you got, which was like, well, like, was it a good written piece? And I was like, no, like, it was like, I put it together the night before it was due. Like, and he's like, "Well, what do you expect? It's like, work harder," you know? So I just, like, I don't know why that story, like, paralleled in my mind as, like,
Yeah.
telling me your story. But yeah, so I wanna turn it back over to you, like, you know, some of the challenges you faced, and even for, like, you know, like, for maybe, people in the industry, right, that are either, like, underrepresented in sometimes, or may not have the same, like, you know, exposure, like you were saying, right? Like, a lot of the kids you went to college with, their dads were engineers or their moms were engineers, or, like, they had some exposure to this industry. Like, as a leader, what are things you do today that maybe all of us could do to kind of make them, like, feel welcome, help overcome those challenges, and make them better versions of themselves so that when they're in our shoes, right? Because eventually they will be, that they're also making this industry better and stronger.
Yeah, I think a lot of it ties back to communication. If you don't understand something, ask. And I think that, for us that are professionals who've been here for a while, it's like we have to be willing to make time for others. It's so important. Like you can't get to the point where, like I tell somebody, it takes about 20 years to be an overnight success. I heard somebody say that and I was like, yeah, I think so. Because the reality is that it doesn't happen or it takes time, right? So I think you have to remember that and you have to take time to pour into people. I think that's very important, but that's not going to happen unless you have an environment that's safe enough to do that. Like we had a meeting, I think that was last night. It's amazing how long time feels like it was a long time ago. So it was last night. One of the people on my team is getting ready to give a very big technical talk. It'll be the largest talk she's ever done. And we met together as a team and we went through the talk and we gave all kinds of feedback. She was a trooper. She took it all and she's going to incorporate it and she's going to absolutely crush this presentation. Right. And, but what was cool is that when we were going through it, it was like, boiling it down to the simplest aspect was what is the story that you want to tell here? Get an understanding of what the story is that you want to tell. You know how to tell it better than anybody else because you're the one that's on the project and do it. Right. And she's going to do that. And I realized that when we did it that way, it's almost like when she presents, the whole team's going to be there to support her, but it's almost like they all have ownership in what has happened, right? And I thought that it was a very healthy thing, right? And I'm thinking about times that I presented. Yeah, there were times I had to ask somebody, "Hey, take a look at this and help me to understand. Does this make sense?" Like you worked on the project, does it make sense? You didn't work on the project, does it make sense? So I think that we have to create an environment that's safe enough for people to say, hey, I don't understand what's going on. Help me out. Get me ready. And then you'll be ready. Right. And I think that from a leadership standpoint, I think it's important for us to always be looking for opportunities to bring somebody with us that might not think they're ready yet. Because if they hear from you, you're ready to be in this boardroom. You bring them in the boardroom and they could be just taking notes, right? They could just be taking notes. But eventually it's going to come a point where there's something that they should be able to answer. Give them the opportunity to answer. I'll never forget. I was in a project. I was out there for probably about 6 or 7 months. And my supervisor was at the what do you want to call it? The trailer meeting where they go through progress and things of that sort. So he was being asked a question and he looked at me. I was there just taking notes. He said, well, Jared, what do you think about it? And I kind of looked around in my mind. I'm like, Jared, who, right? Oh, you're talking to me? Yeah. Because I was a young guy, right? And the reality is that I knew the answer. I said it and he nodded his head. I didn't screw it up. He nodded his head. I was like, all right, good, that's fine. And in my mind, I'm like, I could do this, right? So I think that, if somebody feels like they're the only, whatever that means, or they feel like they're new to the industry, a lot of us are challenged that, you start out, you get to a job site and you're the youngest person there. You look like everybody's kid, right? So, you have to deal with that. But the reality is that you have to know that I do belong here. I'm not just taking up space. And I want to find a way to contribute to the good that's happening here. And the reality is that it's going to take time. And I'm probably going to have to ask a lot of questions. Where do I ask the questions? Who do I ask the questions to? Talk with your supervisor, talk with your mentors to kind of work out the nuance there. But after a while, it's like, all right, maybe I don't talk to the person that's, the CEO of that, company, but maybe I talk to my peer group there, right? And as you get to know the folks at the other company, or whether it's the contractor, the consultant, the manufacturer, whatever it is, it's your age group, they're just as confused as you are, right? So
Yeah.
now all of a sudden you could grow up you can grow up together. And I found that that's the model that has helped me the most. And I always tell my younger staff to keep that in mind. And the reality is that yeah, there are things that they know that we don't because they just came out of school. And I think that if we create spaces that are safe enough, then everybody that's in that room can get us closer to the right answer. And I think that sometimes people are shy or they don't say anything because they're not supposed to. But I'm the kind of leader that's like, no, I hire smart people. I kind of move out of the way and then let them do great things, right? And then if they're going too far, it's like, hey, you gotta dial that back a little bit, right? But a lot of the opportunities that I had were because somebody had an opportunity to say, you know what, this is actually a better opportunity for him. Like Salvador, for instance, the board position for Salvador, I believe, was going to go to one of my managing principals, and he looked at the requirements. He said, this would actually be a good opportunity for Jared. He said, Jared's in the classrooms. He's talking to students all the time. He's advocating for, people going into STEAM majors. It's like, this sounds like a better place for him to be. And he told me, and I was like, wait, this is a position for you, and you're telling me that you think I could do it? And I got in there, I was like, oh my goodness, these are all like, you see what the board, it's like C-suite folks. How am I gonna be here, right? I was like, this is so intimidating. And as I was there, and when I saw that there was an opportunity that I could contribute, I raised my hand and I said, well, I would like to help with that. And there was a fundraising in that case. And I remember I came to Sabrina afterwards and I said, well, I don't want to lead it, but if somebody else is doing it, I'd be willing to co-lead it, right? And I remember the gentleman that was the he ended up getting an opportunity to become like the CEO of like this I think it was a non-for-profit in Texas or something. Like, this is the amazing opportunity. So he left. So now all of a sudden I was the guy. I was like, wait, I've never fundraised before. How does this work? And the board, like you all are, they all came together and it was fantastic. So then I said, yeah, I'll just keep doing it. And then that ended up being, now I'm the chair. And it's similar for other organizations. I bet like I just became a part of the board of direction for American Society of Civil Engineers. And, we have countless people within Langan that are involved with ASCE. A lot of us have been involved since we were in college or as young professionals. And so like to be a part of an organization at that level, it's only possible because I have a supporting cast of people that are making that possible, right? So I just think that we have to be looking for opportunities for the younger folks, the newer folks that I'm the only engineer in my family. We have to find opportunities to make sure that the industry remains welcoming for everybody, because the reality is that we need people. So if you have somebody that's interested in this industry, we should not shy. We should not push them away.
Cultivate it. Cultivate any interest you hear to be involved. I agree.
Exactly. Even if it's like, well, I think I like math. I'm like, oh, civil engineering.
You love it.
Yeah, that's what I would say. That's what I'd say.
Well, I just like some great leadership advice in there. And I think the whole idea of open environment is really important, right? People need to know that if they want to speak their mind, and you have to keep in mind, it's really hard, right? When you're just entering, you think everything you're going to say is stupid. Like I did, I'm sure you did. Like that's like a natural feeling, right? We don't know as much as all these people around us, but the environments in which people allow us to speak our mind, I found two things happen. One is everybody in the room's better for it, because if I was wrong or I was saying something, stupid, it got corrected, and I understood why it got corrected, right? So now the whole room is better for it, including, especially me, but everybody, because I'm now supporting them in a way that's intelligent. The other thing that happens is sometimes someone says something novel, and you take a step back and you're like, yeah, actually, have we tried that? Like you look around at everyone else in the room, like, what you guys been thinking about? Like, and it's like, so keeping that open environment, it's like, so learning experience for everybody, right? The other thing you touched on, and it's funny because during our huddle, literally today, was the thought of imposter syndrome, right? That you end up in rooms where you are scared because you don't think you belong, and to just like believe you belong. Like, if someone has entrusted you to be there, there's probably a reason why, and trust yourself and believe in yourself to be there. So I think some great leaders.
That's so key. That's so key. And sometimes you need to hear that. I have one of the managing principals who he was at the career fair when I he's the reason I know about Langan. And I remember he was telling somebody, he's like, yeah, it's like, just because you've never seen this before, everybody doesn't need to know that you've never seen this before. So you got to do your research, right? So you got to do your research. You got to read up. And, if you think you're going to start in a new career or a new job and you're not going to have to study specifications and study calculations and calculate for years, like you have to do the background stuff and you're going to have to do more of it until you get to the point where you're confident. You're like, you know what? I know what the right answer is supposed to look like. I know that's not the right answer. So how are we going to get this to the right answer? And that imposter syndrome is real. I mean, I'm 20-year professional. There's sometimes I get into a room and I'm like, I gotta psych myself out of that. I'm like, wait, no, we can do this. We're here, right?
And you hit the nail on the head. Like the first time I came to a Salvador meeting, I had that feeling. I was like, I don't think I belong. Like these are CEOs of very large organizations. But I love everything we do about Salvador. The other thing I just want to touch on, and then we're going to jump into our lightning round that you keep saying, and I really like, so I just want to make sure I emphasize it, is and I don't know if you're doing it naturally or if it's something you're always doing, but you're talking about like pouring into others. And I just find that to be such a like great, like a visualization, right? Like, yeah, you have knowledge. And if you can help impart that knowledge onto someone else, like do it. If you can support someone else, do it. If you can help someone else, do it, and by doing that, you're consistently like pouring out into the world, right? Like, and I just, you said it a few times and I wanted to make note of it because I really liked it.
That's cool. And that means that you got to find a way to make sure you stay full too, because otherwise you get burnt out. So that's another thing. Like I think that we don't really, I mean, we're talking about it in the industry more, but like mental health is like super important. It's like, sometimes you get to the point where you're like, you're out too much. It's like, I need sleep or I need to, find whatever it is, hobbies and things of that sort. And mental health's real. Like I got a therapist. That's a real thing. You got to do what you got to do to make sure that your mind is where it needs to be as you're pouring out. Otherwise, you're gonna be pouring out mess.
They say it a lot, and it's true for like parents also, right? Like you as your best self need to also take care of yourself in order to take care of like a family or a team or whatever else you say. So it's a great point. All right, let's jump into lightning round. So way lightning round works is I have a couple of pre-scripted questions here. They're quick hitters. First thing that comes to mind. And if one doesn't apply, just let me know. It's fine. But first one I have here is what's a book that has the biggest impact on your life or perspective?
A book that had the biggest perspective.
And are you a reader? Because that might be hard if you're not a reader.
The first book that comes to mind, well, Bible. I'm the Bible, but taking a religion and putting that to the side. There was this book called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
I know the book.
I remember I'm a reader, but I'm a very slow reader. That was the fastest book that I ever read. And it's a book that I come back to very often when I'm getting ready to make like a new decision and I'm getting ready to go on a journey. So I definitely put that. That's
awesome.
That's up top. Yeah, that's up top.
What do you think is a small habit that you have that's made like a big difference in your success, right? Because presumably, there were other people that also started at Langan at the same time as you, or like other people that started in the industry at the same time as you. So what's like a small habit you have that is like that you think made a big difference in why you're successful?
I would say I'm not afraid to ask for help.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
What's the biggest lesson you've learned from a failure?
Biggest lesson I've learned from a failure is that if you treat failure the right way, then you never fail and you don't have to walk in fear.
I love that.
Yeah. So it's like you win or you learn. You never lose.
Win or learn. Yeah, it's a great perspective. That closes out the lightning round. This was an
all
awesome
right. It was good.
episode.
I survived
Jared,
the lightning round. That was
anything
intense.
any thoughts you want for closing?
No, I would say thank you for this opportunity to be here. I love what you're doing. I've seen you in action, and I love what you're doing. You have that's the right way to say it. As my folks would say, my wife's folks would say, you come from good stock. You're represent Jamaica there. But no, I love what you're doing for the industry, and I've seen it, and you've made a name for yourself. People like being around you, and that's a good attribute. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of your story today. This is great. So thank you.
I gotta say likewise, and I wasn't kidding when I opened and I said, like, honestly, every room I'm in where if you're there, I know you're energized. I know that room is energized. I feel like I'm in the right room. And thank you for everything you do for the industry. The fundraising is incredible. The support is incredible. And I know you spend so much time, obviously on your Langan priorities that you're really giving back to the industry in a big way. So I thank you as well. Thank you for everything you do. And with that, I'll just say that's all the time we have for today's episode. So we'll include any links to resources we mentioned in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, everybody, and keep an eye out for our next episode.
This episode is brought to you by Infinite Consulting Corp, your go-to firm for MBE certified project and construction management consulting. Discover how Infinite can help you build a better future at infiniteconsultingcorp.com.